At around 9 p.m. on September 26, 2014, a woman named Kyan Lauder made a panicked 911 call in which she alleged that there was a fight going on inside her condo's clubhouse. When she was asked if any weapons had been involved in the fight, she claimed she had heard gunshots. When the cops arrived at the condo, they saw a wedding reception full of happy guests and had trouble believing what Kyan had told them. According to the police report, one of the guests admitted he had previously lit a firecracker, which Kyan may have mistaken for a gunshot. Strangely, a few hours later, Kyan once again called 911 but hung up before the dispatcher picked up. A few minutes later, the cops called her back and they reported that she sounded pretty confused. Although the cops had trouble understanding what she was saying, Kyan did confess that her roommate thought she was acting delusional and paranoid. A little after 8 a.m. the next morning, she once again called the cops, and this is the call that is most often referred to as one of the most disturbing recorded 911 calls publicly available. During the call, Kyan tells the dispatcher that there's an intruder in her apartment, but then contradicts herself several times and starts saying a bunch of things that just don't make any sense. At one point during the call, Kyan's roommate Carol walks in a room and sounds pretty confused at the allegations that someone broke into their apartment. A few seconds later, Kyan explains that the previous night she had seen multiple people stalking her through her window and apparently were planning on breaking in. Strangely, Carol points out that the door to the apartment is still locked and has been locked all morning, which would obviously make it impossible for someone to break in. Because her body had been decomposing in the water for so long, it took the cops a while to determine her age and gender. Even when they confirmed her identity, it was impossible for them to determine the cause of death, which added another layer of mystery to the case. From the moment the body was discovered, Kyan's family claimed that foul play had been involved. But this was impossible to confirm due to the level of decomposition in her body. What's strange about this case is that her body was found pretty far away from where the authorities speculated she had accidentally fallen into the creek and drowned. The river she allegedly fell into is pretty shallow, and even with the heavy rain, it seems unlikely that her body could have been carried all the way to where it was found without getting snagged on a branch or stuck in the mud. On April 20, 1989, a woman named Peggy Buer drove down a dark country road near a small town in Montana named Circle. Suddenly, she saw a woman driving in her lane on the wrong side of the road, heading straight toward her at a pretty high speed. Peggy swerved and was fortunately able to avoid crashing head-on. Unfortunately, Carol Whites, the woman in the car behind Peggy, wasn't as fortunate. Carol had witnessed the near miss just seconds earlier and had attempted to swerve out of the way as well, but was struck head-on by the woman driving the wrong way. Shocked from the crash and understandably a little dazed, Carol stepped out of the car and tried to find the woman who had caused the accident. A few seconds later, a blonde woman in her mid-30s crawled out of a wrecked vehicle and stood on the side of the road. According to Carol, the woman didn't say anything. She just stared at her with a blank expression. With no real leads other than Patricia's identity and her family's statements, the cops tried to find a viable explanation as to where she could have gone. After a while, they narrowed it down to two possible theories. Either Patricia had hitched a ride after disappearing into the darkness, or she stowed away on a hay truck that the cops had seen a little more than a mile from the crash site. This is where things get a little strange. Over the next few days, a bunch of people started calling the cops claiming that they had seen Patricia Meehan at different truck stops and diners along I-70, acting dazed and confused and asking strangers for rides. By the end of June that year, more than 25 sightings had been reported to Patricia's parents, who had both traveled to Montana in hopes of finding their missing daughter. Interestingly, a lot of people who claimed to have seen Patricia verified that it was her when her parents showed them pictures and videos of her. But every single one of them had failed to report the missing woman to the actual cops. It was as if she was doing everything to stay one step ahead of the cops and her parents, even in her seemingly confused state. In the fall of that year, more and more sightings and reports of Patricia started surfacing. In September, Patricia allegedly hitched a ride from a woman in Victor, Montana, who offered to let her stay with her and her husband for the night. The next day, they dropped her off at a truck stop to bring her closer to some friends She said she was visiting in another part of the state. By the time the couple realized they had a wanted missing woman on their hands, Patricia was gone. On the night of May 27, 2018, 20-year-old Spencer Mugford met up with his friend Sophia McKenna in the parking lot of the University of Connecticut Avery Point, where Spencer was a student at the time. Sophia was in a toxic and abusive relationship with a guy named Austin Cordova, which had gotten worse in the months leading up to that night in May. According to Sophia's mom, Austin was seeing someone else while he was still dating Sophia, after which Sophia also decided to date other guys. When Austin found out, he went to Sophia's apartment and tried to kick down the door, allegedly threatening to end her life. It was after this incident that Sophia started to spend a lot of her time around Spencer Mugford, whom she had met while working at a local spa. They dated for a while, but it didn't take long before they decided to go back to just being friends. A couple of weeks later, Spencer took on another job on a charter boat, taking people out on the water for half-day fishing trips. That night in May, Spencer and Sophia met at the parking lot and got in a mastless sailboat they took from the university campus and headed toward the new London Ledge Lighthouse, a popular tourist attraction in Connecticut that's known as one of the creepiest buildings in the state. A little after 1 a.m., Sophia used Spencer's phone to upload a video to his Snapchat story where he can be seen paddling on the water aboard the tiny mastless sailboat. In the video, Sophia points the phone to the shore and jokingly emphasizes how long they still have left to get to the lighthouse, and the two friends seem in pretty good spirits as they travel toward the lighthouse. On June 8th, 11 days after the disappearance, Spencer's body was found floating in the ocean by a fisherman pretty much in the opposite direction from the sailboat that Austin and his father had found a few days earlier. Both alcohol and THC were found in Spencer's system, even though the official cause of death was labeled as accidental drowning with no signs of human-induced trauma. It didn't take long for people to start coming up with some dark theories as to why Spencer had drowned while Sophia's body hadn't been found. On July 22, 2018, the Facebook group Finding Sophia McKenna was formed where people came together to try to piece the puzzle of Sophia's disappearance. Although the cause of Spencer's death was pretty clear, it seemed strange to a lot of people that the search had been called off so quickly and that Spencer's phone records were never released. Also, it seemed a little suspicious that the fingerprints on the sailboat hadn't been analyzed and that Sophia hadn't called 911 on the night of the disappearance, even though she clearly needed help. In October 2023, a group of 12 Americans traveled to Guatemala for a Be the Change yoga retreat next to the beautiful Lake Atitlan, the deepest lake in Central America. Among those 12 people was 29-year-old Nancy Ng, a California woman who had been to the same retreat the previous year with the same instructor and had enjoyed it so much that she decided to go again in 2023. At around 10:30 a.m. on October 19th, 10 people from the group went kayaking in Lake Atitlan before paddling to the middle of the lake. A video was taken of the entire retreat group where Nancy could be seen waving at the camera as she paddled a few feet from the shore. She seemed happy as she made her way to join the rest of the group. But sadly, this is footage of the last time Nancy was ever seen. After the video ended, everyone in the group paddled in separate directions, with Nancy kayaking toward the middle of the lake, along with Christina Blasch, another woman from California. What happens next depends on who you ask, but according to the owners of the kayak rental company, the group came back from the excursion a few minutes later, with a lot of them looking pretty nervous and on edge. That's when they noticed the group had one less person. Nancy hadn't come back. Strangely, nobody in the group seemed to want to talk to the owners. As per the owner's testimony, the retreat goers went home as quickly as they could, failing to even pay for the kayaks or provide an explanation as to what happened to Nancy. According to witnesses, Christina Blasch looked visibly shaken and had to be calmed down by the rest of the group as they made their way back home. Sensing that Nancy was about to be in serious trouble, Christina paddled as hard as she could to retrieve the kayak and bring it back to her. But by the time she got back to where her friend was swimming, Nancy was gone. Refusing to put herself in danger to rescue Nancy, who was now submerged under the strong currents of Lake Atitlan, Christina reportedly paddled back to the shore screaming for help. But by the time she made it back, It was too late. Strangely, the Guatemalan police said Christina gave them her statement about the incident and was very forthcoming with them. But when Nancy's family reached out to the Guatemalan authorities, they couldn't find any records of Christina's statement on their files. At this time, allegations started being thrown around that Nancy had never been offered a life jacket before she went on her kayak, but the owners of the kayak rental company went on record to clarify that that was completely false and that the only reason Nancy could be seen without a life jacket in the video was that she decided not to take one. On September 12, 1987, a 50-year-old security guard and maintenance man named Dale Cater went to work as he usually did at the Corning Glass Works plant in Bradford, Pennsylvania. At 11 p.m., he began his night shift as a weekend security guard. The next morning at around 7 a.m., the day shift security guard named John Lindquist came to relieve Dale from his shift, but he was nowhere to be found. John immediately went to the cafeteria to see if Dale was there, but the only thing he found was Dale's lunchbox with his food still inside. Strangely, a few minutes later, Dale's truck was found in the parking lot of the plant with his keys, a pack of cigarettes, his backpack, and an empty pistol holster still inside the truck. Sensing something was wrong, the cops brought search dogs to the plant to find Dale. A few minutes later, the dogs traced Dale's scent to the second floor where the plant's glass furnace was located, along with some pretty valuable platinum pipes. This was pretty strange considering that Dale rarely went to that part of the building and had no business going near the pipes. That's when the plant manager decided to check the security footage from the night before, and what he found was pretty disturbing. In the footage, the manager saw a masked man walking around the plant, apparently scouting the building. Shortly after, the man ran up to the second floor of the plant where the highly valuable platinum pipes were located. This led some people to believe that he may have been in on the crime, which would explain how the masked man knew his way around the plant so well. Still, his family claims he would have had several other legal ways of obtaining the money before resorting to a high-stakes premeditated robbery and disappearance without a trace. One of the things that makes the disappearance so ambiguous is Dale's behavior in the security camera footage. For starters, it's hard to tell if he was truly being forced to walk out of the room with the man, or if he was just pretending to be coerced. And when he looks up at the camera, it's really anyone's guess if he was silently begging for help or if he was performing a sort of gesture of defiance toward his former employers. To this day, it's unknown if Dale was murdered after being the unwilling witness of a crime, or if he was an inside man who left his entire family behind for money.